Welcome to Exposure Therapy, and today we have a wonderful self-portrait photographer, AnnMarie Tornabene. AnnMarie, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you.
So you are, if I'm not mistaken, you are somewhere in France close to Paris. Is that right?
Correct. Correct. I moved here about 8 years ago from New York
Oh, wow.
for love,
You
mainly
followed
for
a
love.
boy.
My husband is French, so that's what I'm here for, mainly.
Well, if you're going to move anywhere for love, I guess Paris would be the place, eh?
Absolutely, right?
So how long have you been doing photography?
More than 25 years.
Wow.
I went to university. I went to Long Island University in New York for photography, and I graduated in 1998 with my Bachelor of Fine Arts, and it went on from there, in fact.
Nice. So I guess how did you get your start? Like did you have like a parent that inspired you, or did you just
Not at all.
you
In
know?
fact, um, my dad had some artistic skills, but he was mentally ill, so he wasn't able to really pursue an artistic career. Plus, this was also back in the 60s, 50s and 60s, where, being an artist did not exactly bring any food to the table. So, but other than that, it was really me because of some things that I experienced in my childhood that led me to escape into the arts. And art and music were both very inspiring in my life. So it helped me form a bubble, and I was able to create, and I was really into that.
So oh, sorry, go ahead. You were gonna
No,
are you all right? Do you still today dabble or practice music, play music?
no, unfortunately, I went the visual route because I just failed at the at the music aspect. I was very good at music reading when I was a child. I
Hmm.
really took a lot of classes in school for guitar and voice and all that. But unfortunately, I felt that it really wasn't as much my calling, and I preferred to be the appreciator of music and I really preferred to be on the visual end as well.
Connoisseur.
Yeah.
Very good. So I see in behind you there you have a
Oh.
swath of it looks like DVDs, Blu-rays. What can you?
Yeah, yeah.
What's going on back there?
My husband and I are huge film buffs, and in fact, my husband spent the last 25 years in post-production in film and cinema. So we are just enormous film buffs, and you probably see Star Trek, Star Wars, and all that kind of stuff there too, and
All
some
right,
French films as well.
maybe you can solve the age-old battle: Star Trek or Star Wars. Which one reigns supreme?
Star Wars.
Uh, well,
Well, that would be what my husband would say, I think.
okay.
But
See,
he's both. He's into both. So I don't know. I'm not really a science fiction movie buff. I'm more Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and the the fantasy
that
movies.
was I asked you to submit 5 photos of yours, and
Right.
I have some photos, and actually the I guess we'll get to those shortly, but the style is kind of you say you like the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and things like this, and when I see your photos, that makes immediate sense to me.
Really?
Uh,
Well, that's great.
yeah.
Yeah, my work is very fantasy oriented, in fact, and very fairy tale oriented because I inspire not just from Lord of the Rings, but in general. I like my work to be in that realm.
What was the first like? Can you remember back to the first time you picked up a camera, shot something? Like, what was that experience like?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, the very first time I picked up a camera was in middle school. I was 13 years old, and I took a photography class, and it was a twin lens reflex camera, and I had no clue what to do with it. I didn't understand light metering. I didn't understand f-stops and shutter speeds, and the teacher at the time was trying to explain it to me, but I really didn't understand it. scared me, in fact, the whole technical aspect. So so the photographs that I got during the assignments were terrible. And then I let it go, and I went into drawing and painting a little bit, and I went back, but something kept bringing me back to photography. But it wasn't until I graduated from high school that I started to work for a wedding photography studio, and I got the bug back to want to be into photography, portraiture at the start too, especially.
How do you enjoy shooting weddings?
I never did. I was
Oh.
I was the assistant. I wasn't
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
the
Okay.
photo. No, in fact, but from what I remember, I hated it. And from what all the photographers would tell me, the horror stories about the long days, and what I had to also do was deal with the brides in terms of
Yeah.
the selling aspect. And I just remember it was just terrible. And I said, I would never be able to do this for a living. No way.
I just thought there'd be a sweet spot to pitch yourself to other photographers in the area, wherever you may be, whoever's listening, as a second shooter for weddings, because
Sure.
you're selling yourself to them in a way that can help them. You're not the competition.
That's
You
right.
don't you don't have to do the editing. You don't have to do the booking. You don't have to do the anything. You just go there. You do the shooting, and then you
That's
submit.
right. And then you leave.
And then you leave. Yeah, you don't have all the admin work to do, and you're also now you have however many photographers around you that are trying to book their own weddings. And you're just kind of piggybacking on that effort and by adding value to them. So that kind of like a fun little side hustle if anyone's into it. So in a questionnaire I sent you before we came on this interview, I asked you what your favorite camera, what your favorite lens was, and you talked about the Hoka camera.
Yeah.
So what's your experience or exposure to the Hoka camera?
Well, here's the thing, when I was in university, I was a photography major, so I learned all the technical end of everything. And the Hoka is anti-tech. And I'm sure whoever's listening that does use Holgas and lomography and any of those kind of cameras, they'll understand what I mean by there is no tech to it. You have two f-stops, with f8 and f5.6, I think, and that's basically it. You have little pictures of a sun and a cloud and a bulb mode. And what I love about it is that it creates these very romantic images. And if you have light leaks, it could be a nice, happy accident. The only problem with the light leaks is that they're always the same. If you have a flaw in the camera, it's always going to be the same flaw. But with Photoshop, you can do other things with that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I love working with it, because it's a little haphazard, the focus is by numbers, so you're not necessarily completely in focus. You just have to eyeball it and pretend you think you know the distance. Unless, there are people that would actually take a measuring tape, but and I just love the fact that you have to wait until this film is developed to see what you get, and there's that little bit of surprise and the happy accidents, like I said.
So obviously that would lend itself towards stuff like portraiture, and not, you're obviously not going to be shooting fast moving objects there. So it's going to be more.
Well, you never know. I know other photographers that have photographed animals moving and things like that. And really it looks like some disturbing imagery when you're done with it, but beautiful stuff. It's a little on the poetic side, if I may. And awesome. I love the format. It's 120 format, so I love that format.
Oh, great. Too. Today's episode is brought to you by Prairie View Photo Tours. Prairie View Photo Tours invites photographers of all levels to book their all-inclusive, authentic Alberta adventure at pvphototours.com. So out of the photos you sent me here, were any of these shot on that style of camera?
Absolutely, yes. The hand in hand is that's the one of me and the my little nymph guy.
That's this one.
Yeah,
here.
that's with the Hoka. That one for sure. Yeah.
So Was this, did someone take this picture, or was this set
No,
up
I
in like
set it
a?
up on a tripod, and I actually have it's hard to see, and I think maybe I photoshopped part of it out, but I have a huge long bulb release.
Oh, okay.
Because you can buy a little bracket that goes on over the lens of the Hoga that has the screw mount that you can screw in a bulb release for, and that's all me.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it looks like you did Photoshop that out, but you can see your hand on
Probably.
your dress there. It looks like it's clasping
Sure.
onto something, so that's great.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, you didn't have to
awesome.
point that out, you know.
No, no, no. I just mean you can see your hand there, and I wouldn't have thought
Sure,
anything unless you told me I'm holding onto a bulb release there.
sure, sure, sure.
So, tell me the story behind this photograph.
Okay, so this is part of a series called Not Wonderland. And in fact, I worked on two series at the same time, Rabbit Holes and Revelations, which there is another photograph there from called The Philosopher of Me and an older man. That was from Rabbit Holes and Revelations, and this is Not Wonderland. These two series were created during a time I was married. I was just about to get married to my first husband. I had also lost a considerable amount of weight. All of my work had stemmed from me needing to accept myself because I was always overweight, and I needed to have to build up my self-esteem because I had been abused my whole life because of my weight. And so I had a lot of transformations at the time happening, the weight loss, about to marry my first husband, not feeling like I belonged in a specific place. And while I lived in New York, as you can see in this picture, this is New York City, I never felt part of an urban environment, and always felt like I belonged in some kind of a fairy tale. So these images were based on that. This one, hand in hand, my little nymph guy on the side is sort of my white rabbit in Alice in Wonderland. So he was supposed to be my voice of reason and my guide. So I took him around. There's a few images of him in the series that I've taken him around. He was great to work with.
Nice.
Yeah.
There's a common theme when I talk to photographers, that photography for them has been some sort of, and it has nothing to do with the name of the podcast, but it's therapeutic for them. It's cathartic. It's a process that, and I guess it's a ritual or whatever it is for them, that they're able to um, I don't know, project whatever turmoil is going on the inside onto their work and
Well,
kind of
to
get
be
that
honest,
there.
in my case, and that's the reason why I reached out to you when you asked for people to interview, is that my work is directly therapy because
Mhm.
it all stemmed from me having the need to express myself, to start the process of self-acceptance. I did portrait work prior to self-portraits, where I purposely sought out beautiful men and women to photograph, beautiful in the standard sense, in the ideal model sense. The reason I did it was, in a strange way, to possess their beauty because I felt like I wasn't beautiful, because I was told I wasn't beautiful my entire life. So I would look for these women, especially, but and men too, to photograph for that reason. And when I would photograph them, I would say, "My God, you're beautiful. This is, whatever, all these compliments I would give them." And immediately their response is, "Oh God, no. Look at my nose, look at my eyes, look at my body. No, I'm not beautiful. I'm not that." And I said, how are you saying that? Like, I really didn't understand how they were complaining about the way they looked when other people could see them as the ideal, what society says is beautiful. And that's what got me thinking. I said, if these people are not happy with the way they look, then there's something else going on. There's something deeper going on than that our society is seeing people, the judgments and whatnot. And so I then said, you know what, maybe I'm not as ugly as I think I am. Maybe there is something to me. If not, I need to do something anyway. So that's when I went from portraiture to self-portraiture. And my very first series in university, my thesis, was my very first really large color nude self-portraits. And my professors at the time were extremely happy that I was doing this, and they were really supportive of what I did. And that went on and on to go to become my career of doing self-portraits. But it went from, I didn't want the work to constantly be focused on my body, because I do know people that do that as well, and that's fine. But I wanted to evolve and go from, okay, I did all of this work that was focused on showing who I was and saying that I was beautiful, to, okay, let's go deeper into the psychology. Let's go deeper into other themes that I want to focus on, like spirituality, you know, symbolism, and some other things. And that's what I did in the 25 years that I've been doing this.
Awesome.
So it has been all therapy.
What I guess, what is your preferred setup? Like, what do you like to use to shoot nowadays?
Okay, so unfortunately, I had to lose my darkroom, because I used to shoot with my Nikon what did I have, an FM2? And FM2, excuse me. It's been a while. But I did love to shoot with that, and I still shoot with the Hoka. But now I'm shooting with a Canon digital. See, I'm not much of a tech person anymore, so I bought it's the 8000, I think. It's a digital camera, and it does the job. I'm not a big fan of shooting digitally, but it is easier now. It's less expensive, obviously. I can now make a million mistakes, and I can go back and reshoot a little bit easier than when I had to with film. So that's as far as setup. I usually shoot outside when I can, because I prefer natural settings. But when I'm indoors, I'm not an artist. I'm using a spot right now on me, but I usually prefer natural light. So indoors, natural light, outdoors, natural light, as much of that as possible.
I do like natural light as well. Like, it's so beautiful. And it's a lot less heavy to carry around everywhere.
Absolutely. And indoors you can, I mean, there are ways to control it. You can put up tracing paper. Even you can put things on the windows to control how much light and what kind of light comes in. The only problem is that if you have a really bright sunny day, obviously, and it keeps changing as you're shooting, and it gets a little bit frustrating. But I've managed over the years to figure out what works for me best. And that's
nice.
that. Yeah.
All right. So we've looked at that hand-in-hand one in New York City.
Yeah.
I'm going to go, I don't know if this is in New York or Paris, but I'm going to bring this one up here.
That's in New York as well.
That's New York as well.
Yeah, that was a fun shoot. That was really a fun shoot. That was one of the first pictures that I used as a transition from rabbit holes and revelations to Not Wonderland. And I was still shooting in 35mm format. The three guys on the left, they were actually models that I hired. And I purposely searched for guys that could look like thugs, you know, from the city. And it's funny because they're so not. But I mean, when I was one of them, is, you know, it's just this beautifully flamboyantly gay guy. I loved him to death, and he just, like, he puts the hat on. He said, "Is this right?" And I said, "That's great." But they really played the part so well, and we did this fun shoot in an underground parking garage, in fact. So the guys on the left, I had them pretend that they were, you know, playing you know, poker or whatever, you know, doing whatever on the street. And I was completely separate from it. Again, it's a little obvious that I'm showing how I don't belong in this kind of environment.
There's quite a bit. I like the contrast here, like both, like with the dark and the light. Right. But again, also you kind of separate away from what's going on here. And then also the composition I really like. I like how you have the odd numbers to the left, 3, and then a 1 on the other side there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
the interesting thing about me with composition, getting back to university for a minute, I had to take a class called 2D design, and 2D design is a class that teaches you about not just design but composition. And when the teacher was trying to explain it and trying to have us do things, I didn't understand how she was explaining it. I just did the assignment the way she asked. And she pulled me aside one day and she said, and I'm not saying this to sound pretentious or anything, but she said, where did you learn how to compose? And I said, I didn't. And she said, well, you have a natural eye for it. So I kind of tend to do, I'm a big fan of the left right thing. So I tend to always have something off-centered. I never have anything centered, you know, and I try to look for lines and things that will aid the eye to what I want them to really look at. And I think that shot that you just posted is one of my favorite. That's why it's one of my favorites, because the banister, the thing that goes up the stairs, it really brings the line down to me. And I didn't at first, I wasn't sure that was going to work because of the way the guys were set up, but I think it did.
You also have that little bit of light right at the bottom of it too that highlights that is past the guys and kind of points off to you.
Yeah, that was an accident, because I don't really know where that light came from, because I didn't use any artificial light. This is just light from inside the garage. So I don't know how that happened, in fact.
Well, hey, we'll take it.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Up here, what do we have here? Okay, I'm going to go to this one here. This one's very interesting to me.
Oh, thank you. That's one of my more recent ones. So that's probably why I gave you that one. It's called Oracle. It's part of the series Les Peintures. And one of the things that I always experimented with over the years was mixed media. I didn't always want to do straight photography. I wanted to include paint or different things. And I even did some series of work using acrylic transfers. But for some reason, when I was thinking about this series, I didn't want to get into the messy aspect. I just wanted to see what I could do, how farther I can push the Photoshop aspect. Because I did a series prior to this called The Divine Journey, which I did the same thing. I took some images and I layered images with textures and my face melding with some sculptures. But there was still something about it that felt very Photoshop-y. So when I did the series La Peinture, I wanted it to be a little more painterly looking. I didn't want... I tried really hard not to make the process show more than the image. So I think this succeeded in that, because when I know it's hard to see, unfortunately, on a screen. When you see the print in person, people have asked me, oh, how did you do that? And when I don't really like to always talk about the process, but when I said, well, it's all digitally done, and they said, no, it's not. And I said, yes, it is. I said, well, I'm glad that you're arguing with me, because then that's a successful piece. And I use multiple layers, of different things, and changing the color shifts and doing all sorts of things. And this is Oracle. It's one of my more spiritual pieces. And I'm very pleased with the outcome.
So what does this image represent? So what, like, the idea, you've talked a bit about the process, but what about the idea behind it?
Well, I often repeat the theme of the Madonna and sainthood and martyrdom in my work. And for me, it's a little obvious, especially the martyr aspect, because I feel like that, as I mentioned earlier, quickly, I'm not going to get into a whole psychology of it, but I was abused growing up because of my appearance, which led to other problems. and my father was also mentally ill. I had problems in relationships. I've had some toxic relationships. My self-esteem was terrible. All these things. I was doing a lot of my own self-torture. So as the years went on, I just felt like I had to very directly address that in my work. So often, the idea of a saint, the saint is created and canonized from usually some horrible things that they did when they were human form. Or not always, but some they obviously what they did was they were tortured, and then they tried to do something to fight back, the evil, and it was in a way to canonize them. So I not that I'm a saint, it's just that I liked that idea of trying to reach that that ideal in a psychological way. So
Nice.
and so that's that is one of that theme is if you look at my website especially, you'll see a lot of that in my works.
So outside of your website and your Instagram, you talked about when people see that print of the Madonna there, that not the Madonna, just that with the image
Oracle.
Oracle, yeah, excuse me.
Yeah.
When they see the print, they think like, oh, this is just digital, and they're really surprised by that. So you print things. You obviously talked about having a dark room.
Absolutely. Well, I don't have a dark room anymore, but I do.
Right.
I think the print is a lot more important than what's on the screen. Unfortunately, not a lot of people feel that way today.
Like how do you choose to display or store your work? Like, do you print everything?
No, I don't. If I could afford to, I would. But unfortunately, nowadays I print when necessary, usually for an exhibition, or if somebody's interested in buying a piece. Otherwise, I have an Epson printer that prints up to 13 by 19 inches. So it's very expensive to print. I use only 100% acid-free paper, usually Canson. I use Canson Infinity Edition Rag or Hahnemühle, but it's all 100%, plus the pigment inks. So it gets to be expensive. So I only print when necessary. As far as displaying, that's been an interesting thing. I'm older than a lot of people now, so I was always about the traditional way of displaying, which is with an overmat and a frame. Apparently that's not the way to do it anymore. I think it really depends. I think it really depends on the work. In my black and white traditional work, I think still deserves that, but pieces like the Oracle, I printed it and had it mounted on this stuff called D-Bond, which is I think it's like a rigid plastic support with no frame. It's just that there's no border, there's nothing. And that kind of work, it works for that kind of work, I think, because it makes the image just stand out and you have nothing else that you need to look at. Yeah, I'm noticing now the different trends of the way work is being displayed, and it's not anything like it was 20 years ago. So
changing fast, and cameras too. Like technology, as you said, is changing very fast.
I know. I didn't even understand what mirrorless cameras were until recently, and I still don't really completely understand the concept.
The funny thing is, I when I made my upgrade from my DSLR, I went to mirrorless because I thought,
you did? Okay.
I thought, oh, it's going to be so much lighter, especially for wedding days. And then I went and got like a battery grip and then like this huge honking lens. And I'm like, I just undid the whole reason I bought a camera.
Right. That's right. You did.
You get a flash on it. You get this. It's like, yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, I think.
No, I don't think so. And it's just as tiring anyway.
So we had Oracle, and next called Specimen.
Yes. The specimen image was shot for those people that are going to go to my website, which I hope they do, and you go to Le Peinture series. There's an image there called Signs. and it's from the same shoot. In fact, the branches that I have on my back in this picture, it resembles the bear wings, whereas the signs, it's more of a crucifix. And anyway, and basically this is the fact that it's supposed to look like bare bones, that I've been stripped of my wings and trying to regain some kind of freedom, even though they are stripped. So that basically is what that's about. And what I love about this image, even though it's shot digitally, I was able to successfully play with the depth of field in Photoshop and with using textures and other things to create that. To me, I love this image, and I printed this on rice paper, and I think it really, yeah, and I really think it lends itself beautifully to that. It has a very delicate feel to it. Yeah.
So you printed it on rice paper. Is this one mounted on something, or is this one framed, or?
No, not currently. It's up for sale if anybody's interested. But no, I actually printed it as a test on the rice paper because I just really felt that it was perfect for that, and it was. You can find rice paper easily in Hanamule. It was Hanamule's paper.
Amazing. So when you were just chatting there, I went and found your Chrysalis photo.
Ah, there it is. Well, so again, the same concept with Chrysalis, which is the chrysalis of a butterfly, the cocoon coming out of your cocoon. This was again at the same time as the weight loss. I lost over 100 pounds at the time.
Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you, but I gained some back since being here.
What happens?
Thanks,
this is life.
Thanks to the French cuisine. No, it's not only that, but yes, at the time I lost over 100 pounds, and I felt. It's strange. I didn't feel wonderful about myself because we didn't get to talk about me as a model. I could explain that if you want after.
Sure,
but
yeah.
When you lose that much weight and you're not 16 years old, you don't have the body. Your body is not firm, especially if you were overweight your whole life. If you like, there are women who get pregnant, they're thin already, they get pregnant after they have the baby, usually their body bounces back. But because I was always overweight, when I lost the weight, my body didn't bounce back. So I had skin that was, hanging, and it wasn't beautiful. However, I still felt like there was something happening to me, that I was feeling a little more positive with myself and a little more energy and a lot more. There was something happening. So in this shot, I felt like, well, this is me finally coming out of my cocoon to become a butterfly.
Okay. And this was shot on the Hoga, you said?
Yes, this was shot with the Hoga. And so the reason why this one and Specimen went together is because they were both at the major transformation times. So this was happening as I lost all the weight. Specimen happened when I first moved here to France, and I was transforming again. Here's a new life for me. Here's a lot of uncertainty. I was already pretty raw from a divorce, which was why I was stripped down between the divorce and some things with my mother that had happened. So by the time I got here to France, I was kind of worn down because I had so much I had to fight through to get here. So it was kind of the two major transformation points of my life. So that's why they kind of go together, those two images.
So you did touch on it there a little bit. Can we expand a little bit on your, I guess, so you're doing self-portraiture. So you're not just a photographer, but you are also a model, and presumably you've been a model for other photographers as well. What's that journey like for you?
No, actually, what I mean by model is artist model. I model for drawings, painting, and sculpture classes. I have, not that I haven't posed for photographers. I posed for one major one, Lynn Bianchi. If you look up her work, she did some amazing work, especially with other models. I'll get to that in a minute, but when I was still in university and when I was just starting my self-portrait series, I was taking here's something fun for the crowd of today, the photography crowd of today. Back in the day, when artists wanted to submit work to gallery shows, they had to submit their work on slide film. So there wasn't, JPEGs back then. So you had to have someone or yourself take pictures of your work. I'm talking about painters and sculptors that needed to take pictures of their work for the galleries to see.
Oh, wow.
So they would hire a photographer to take the pictures of their artwork. So that's where I came in when I was making a little extra money to the pictures for them. And I was taking pictures of a watercolor artist's work. And while I was there, she asked me what I was doing for my thesis, and I was talking to her about it. And she asked me if I would ever consider posing for a painting class. And I took drawing classes in school where I was drawing from the model, and I loved doing that. And I always had a little bit of jealousy and said, oh, wouldn't that be cool if I was able to do that? But I was also so terrified with the way I looked, and so I didn't let myself think, oh, I could be a model, so I didn't think about it. But when she asked me about it, it was at the same time that I was doing my first self-portrait series, and I said yes immediately, because I said this is another tool to help me with my my road to self-acceptance. My body image issues can be handled again with this route. So I started to do the two simultaneously, and that's my job. That's how I make my money and pay my bills, is as an artist model. So I've been doing that for almost the same amount of time, 25 years. So for universities, art schools, and all that. The photographer Lynn Bianchi is really the only photographer I posed for, because she had a very special series in mind called Heavy in White. And I was the only large woman there. I posed with all of these dancers, ballerinas, and there were other women there too that were very thin, gorgeous women. And we became the sisterhood. Not one of them ever said a bad thing about me. They also made fun of themselves. They made fun of their own bodies. We had so much fun, and we really had a bond while we posed together. We were all nude. It was like one big party. And it was an eye opener too, because these women accepted me like their own. It was where I grew up, in the 80s, where the girls would tease me because I was fat, and I was never accepted by anybody. So here are these beautiful ballerina women, and they thought I was beautiful. They said I was beautiful, and I would cry, and we would hug, and we would, it was such a wonderful thing. And I think because of the dynamic between us, we really were able to work well for this photographer. And she really has some beautiful pictures of us that are very different. She shot infrared film, and we would have these like dinner parties and these tea parties, and she's a wonderful photographer to work for, and she had these really wild setups. And if anyone wants to go see her, Lynn Bianchi, you can find her website too.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That just listening to that experience for you, it sounds like it took a lot of bravery to kind of go and do that, especially when there's an immediate comparison, I guess, at least in your own mind, to the people beside you in those photos.
Right.
But that bravery that you showed at the end of it has paid off.
I think so. 25 years now. One of the reasons why I started Les Peintures is because I started to develop some arthritis and some health problems, not serious in terms of my body pains, but and that had led me to gain some of the weight back. And for a while, I started to look at myself again, and all of the old thoughts came back about the way I look and the way I feel about myself. And I, as much as I want to stop that and say, okay, AnnMarie, you already did that. You already accepted yourself. Now get over it. there's still, I'm still a human, and I'm still a woman, and I still sometimes judge myself the way I look. But overall, I'm 53 years old, and I've already proved to myself that I'm more than just a fat woman. I am beautiful. But you have those days, some days you wake up and I think everybody does, though. It's not just me. You wake up in the morning, you don't always feel wonderful about yourself, but all of my experiences over the years have definitely helped me to become more confident in who I am.
Yeah, I think all of us have that. So a book by Stephen Pressfield called "The War of Art," and he says that he calls it resistance, right? And every day, and it could come in any form. It could come in your form about your body image. It could come about how you feel about your work, about
Yeah.
all sorts of things. But every day you have to get up and beat that back and just keep marching forward.
Well, to be honest with you, the part of what helped me at the beginning was faking it. You fake it till you make it. I would get up on the model stand to go pose for a new class of drawing students, and just, yeah, thankfully I had music playing too, and I would just get up there and say, "Ta-da! I am a sculptor today, and I'm a dancer today." And even if I didn't feel it inside, I would just force that out and say, "Yes, I am." And even if I didn't think so. And I think it took me a long time to get past that. And thankfully, I had a lot of accolades. I had people telling me how inspired they are and how beautiful I am, and that's so wonderful to hear, because you need to hear that. As much as you don't think so, you say, okay, you shouldn't have to get validation from other people, but yes, you kind of do. I think, especially if you come from a background that I came from. So that all of that helped me, and it helped me continue to work on every level, my photography and my posing.
I think you're right. I think maybe at the end of the day, it's all, you don't need anyone to believe in you. I think you do, but let's even say you don't. There's no denying that when someone does believe in you, especially someone that you care about, they show that
Right.
they believe in you.
Right.
That is amazingly empowering.
Yes, and it's very important, I think, because as I had mentioned, I had a lot of bad problems with my mother. I mean, your mother is supposed to be your mother. She's supposed to love you and accept you and care about you and all those things. And she was the first one to tell me, for at least the first 10 years, when I was 11 years old, when I started to gain a little bit of the weight, that I was fat and ugly. She told me my entire life that I was fat and ugly. And it wasn't until I've been in therapy, and in hindsight, I can see a lot of things. I'm sorry, I didn't want this to become a therapy session, but but anyway, the point I'm saying is that if your mother is the first person that is supposed to love you and be your support system, and if she's not, it is difficult to get that from anywhere else. So because I did this for so long, and I had enough people, ones I cared about and people I didn't even know, give me that validation. Yes, it did help me. That all helped me.
So, okay, we kind of come down to this image here as we talk about your photography, your self-portraiture, your being a model, and self-acceptance. Here it is, right here. This one here is one I'd like to close off with.
That's a great one to close
image.
off with, in fact.
Yeah, and the composition, I love that. I'm very interested to hear, what went into this, what's behind this image.
Thank you. This is probably the most important image that I gave you, because this is the image that I took right after my thesis series in school. So I did these series of color self-portraits for my thesis. They were in studio. I had a piece of fabric with me in almost every shot, maybe not covering me, but it was still there, almost like a security blanket. So, and plus it was in the confines of a studio. So I still felt a safe aspect to it. So even though, and I was by myself still, but it was still a safe thing. And the pictures, in my opinion, were not so successful. The school loved them. I received an award of a visual arts award for that series, but I didn't think it was the most successful because I think I was still too contained. I didn't feel confident yet. So after I graduated, I said, okay, well, I did this. I already, my clothes are off now. I exposed my body to a small amount of people at the time because there was no websites at the time. So what's next? Mm-hmm. For me, it was the obvious. Go outside and really be free. And this image is called ritualistic cleansing, and that's exactly what it is. It's a cleansing of me, a cleansing of my soul, to finally allow myself to be who I am, to finally feel beautiful for the very first time. This was the shot that did that. And this shot has been published a few times. I sold it a few times. And it was shot on Agfa 25, I remember, because I absolutely loved the contrast and I wanted it to be a bold contrast. And it was shot, and I printed it in the dark room with, I think if I remember correctly, I put a little something over the lens for a couple of seconds to make the soft focus. And it also, it also had some reviews in the New York Times with the shot. So yeah, so this, I'm very proud of the shot, in fact.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to save this one for last. It was a pretty poignant shot. So, and the conversation went in that way. So that was fantastic. Couldn't have planned it any better.
That's right. That's right. Excellent.
So, AnnMarie, we have your Instagram and we have your website going down there along the bottom of the screen. But is there any current projects or things that you're doing that you want to draw people's attention to?
Well, to be honest, I'm having a fun time right now with a side project called, I don't really have a title for it. You know, when I came here in 2015 to France, it was to marry my husband, but it was also because it's the first time I was able to really find these beautiful historical places, the chateaus and the castles and the ruins and these really romantic places. And when I lived in New York, I was always looking for these kind of places to shoot, and I finally found them. They're in abundance, honestly. You can go anywhere and you find these, well, not anywhere, but you have to go. So so if you look on my Instagram lately, you'll see a lot of me in a medieval dress, very Lord of the Rings, very but it's not, in my opinion, there is a serious reason for doing it, but when you look at the images, they're not as profound and they're not as poignant as my more serious work. So no, Le Pencheur is my latest series, and I'm working on the second version now, but some of those images are already up on my website. So Le Pencheur 2, so that you can go to see that. But you can always see, I'm always uploading on Instagram the newest stuff that I put up. I honestly use Instagram and Facebook as well, more as experimental platforms, to try and get an idea of what people, the feedback from people, because it's really hard as a photographer, as a fine art photographer, especially, who has a very solitude life, to get any real feedback from people about what they really think. I mean, my husband has an excellent eye because he's been in the cinema field for over 25 years himself. But aside from him, I would like to kind of know what people are thinking. Unfortunately, all you get are the likes. I mean, that doesn't really help me. I would like some real feedback, but I kind of can tell, and it's also good for me. It kind of makes a distance where I can go back and look at them and say, well, that didn't really work that well, or it did work that well. And then the final images would end up on my website. So the website is always the best thing to do, but nobody wants to go on websites anymore. Now they just want
Right? That's
everything
it.
they want quick everything now, just
Yeah.
slide through you, and on the phone no less. So you can't really see a good image on a phone.
Yeah, I finally succumbed, like with videos and stuff too, like just having to accept the fact that we're going to that vertical format video and there's just nothing I can do to
Yeah,
stop it.
I was talking to my husband about that recently, is that now you can't even show a still photo anymore. Now, I actually took some video of a print I made. I put a print on the table and I did a zoom in of the video of the print, and that got more attention than the photo itself.
This is the world we live in.
Yeah, it is.
But there's still a place for people like you and I, AnnMarie.
Yeah, I hope so.
There's
I
still a
hope that
place.
I hope it stays that way, because photography itself it's a scary time for photography because of the social media, and because of how many photographers are out there, and even
And AI.
photography. Yeah, even photography. Oh, the AI! Don't get me started on that. You know, my poor illustrator friends who are doing the legal battles right now because of that. I don't know how it's really affecting us in photography, but for illustrators and painters, it's really becoming a serious problem. But anyway,
Maybe it'll be a thing where, you know, there's two comparable photographs and one was taken by a human and one was made by AI. And maybe there'll be some more intrinsic value here. You know, maybe we'll think
well,
this is more.
I also think in the end, from the little bit I know about it, I think I asked myself, well, what are people afraid of? Is it can this thing be printed? I guess it can, but I don't really know what the print would look like. So if it's a digital print, then in the end, do you really see the photographer's hand, or do you see, well, if it's an illustrator or a painter, it's going to be a digital print. It's not going to be the original anyway. So what value would that have? If it's a book publishing company, for instance, I can see that being an issue for the illustrators, because they can now do their own stuff. They don't need to hire an illustrator or a painter to do their book covers, for instance. But for an actual piece of art, I know that this whole thing started because I think a painting won in an award in an exhibition or something like that with an AI painting. But again, how did they even know that it was a real painting? Because even if you print a digital print on canvas, you know it's a print. You can tell it's not a painting. There's no brush strokes, real, you know. So I think I'm hoping at some point that whole thing just kind of dies down, and people realize that it's not going to become more than what it is. I hope.
Unless they get that into like a physical form, and now it can actually hold the brush and do the thing, right?
No, that's next. We have the robot doing that, you know.
Right, that's right.
Kind of Jetsons, like, you know. My time, I don't know.
AnnMarie, I really want to thank you for coming on today. It has been a true pleasure to speak with you.
You're so welcome.
Yeah, everybody go check AnnMarie out at AnnMarie Tornabene and AnnMarieTornabene.net, as you can see at the bottom of the screen. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you, AnnMarie. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.